Alright, YouTube, it's me, David Harry, your favourite YouTuber and vlogger. So what I done the other day was to go out and do a very specific test with the DJI Mic Mini, and that was to disable its internal limiting function and then to be able to apply that in post myself. Now I'll explain all about what I've done here when I run through these outdoor sections of this particular test. However, it's exactly what I'm doing right now. So the Mic Mini here doesn't have any limiting on, and it also doesn't have any shelving applied. And I forgot to mention in the outdoor test that there was no shelving, but no shelving, no limiting. Now I'm recording this directly to this camera here, and then I'm synchronizing the audio from this camera to the picture on that camera over there. Anyway, so like I say, 2 tests here. There'll be a couple of chapters and stuff, and I'll just come back in at the end for a very quick end summary. But first of all, a massive thank you to Kevin Muldoon, who sent me the Mic Minis. And Kevin, these microphones have changed my life.
Okay, so I'm just out in the park then, just to do this testing. So let me just explain first of all what it is that I'm actually doing. And then what I'm going to do is do a little bit of a talk here, and then I'll do some handheld vloggy walking stuff as well. So basically, when you get these Mic Minis, they automatically come with the limiter switched on inside the microphones. Now what you have to do, you have to then connect up, you know, the mics and the receiver to a phone with the DJI Mimo app on in order to be able to control certain things. And a few of those things that you can control directly from the app are going to be whether it's a mono or stereo recording, which is going to be really important depending upon whether you're recording 1 mic or 2 mics. You can also then apply, say, different levels for the noise reduction, of which apparently there's always a form of low level noise reduction permanently switched on. I'd like to see the option for that to be able to switch it completely off. However, whatever it's doing is not aggressive, so I don't have any like immediate issues with any kind of artifacts that noise reduction may or may not be doing to the recorded audio. But you know, there are a few other settings in there that you can change, but one of them is to switch off the limiter. Now the thing is, what limiters are designed to do is to stop certain peaks from going too high. So as for instance, if you do not overload the microphone itself, the capsule inside the mic, then what you don't want to do after that point is to overload the recording level, and that's where a limiter is really good. However, a limiter does by definition restrict the dynamic range of the microphone itself, or at least the recording. So like I say, switching off the limiter will give you a much wider dynamic range. Now you could argue and say, well, in most instances, especially for me, for my YouTube videos, I apply a limiter in post in order to be able to get the level louder, so that I can basically go out at 100% level on YouTube, essentially hitting like their -14 LUFS in order for like maximum volume for playback on YouTube. So you could argue at that point and go, well, hold on a minute, Dave. If you're only going to switch off one limiter in order to be able to apply another limiter in post, what's the point? Well, the big difference with that is that the limiter that I apply in post is something that I have control over. So, you know, whilst I'm mixing various takes or various levels of whatever it may or may not be, in this instance there's likely only to be a couple of takes of this particular microphone, so not a lot of mixing per se going on. But when I've got like a multi-audio timeline on the go with inside Resolve, or indeed this will be the same for any editing system, you know, I want to have as much control over the source audio and be able to dictate in my terms what that audio does. So whether that's the dynamic range or the tone of the recordings, I want that decision left down to me in post. So that's the reason why I think it's a really good option to switch off the limiter on the microphone itself. So as I've switched off the limiter, I've also put the receiver down to -12 on its output going into the iPhone. So what that basically means is that hopefully, and don't forget this is the first time I've tried it, this is me test, without the limiter being on and with me being so low with the attenuation going into the iPhone, one, I'm not clipping or distorting the microphone itself, and two, the level going into the iPhone is nowhere near clipping. I've already tested that to make sure the record level isn't clipping. But then on top of that, what I've also done with the Blackmagic camera app, I have then further reduced its level down to 90% of the input. So once again, two forms of attenuation going on, both of which, once they are summed or negatively summed, means that the recording itself is nowhere near distortion. Anyway, so far what we have heard here, or what we will have heard here, is the results of what I've done in post with just adding my limiter in post. So right now, what we are listening to now is the level exactly as it was recorded. So this is basically going straight in and straight out without any of my post-production limiting being applied. Now at this point, I do not know how much limiting I would have applied in post. So therefore, I don't know how low this take might be compared to the other take. But this is just an example of the limiter not being put on in post. So this is like, the widest dynamic range that we're going to get for this particular recording. And now what I've done now is to switch my post-production limiter back on again, so I should be right back up with the level and stuff like that. Anyway, so yeah, so far what I've done here is just to give ourselves the explanation as to why I've switched the limiter off. And that might be, a good thing for other people to do as well. Now what I'm going to do is just change the position of the microphone and explain another thing that I really like about this microphone, and that's the fact that right now it's connected with the magnet because I've got nowhere to clip it onto me tracky top. But now what I'm going to do is clip it onto the corner of my jacket and then just do some walkie vloggy stuff with it. Okay, so I've now changed the position of the microphone. As you can see, it's just clipped onto the zipper, for my jacket here. So there it is there. And again, this is something that I've, as I just said, is something that I really like about this particular microphone. And that's the fact that you can use it magnetically, as I just was earlier, with it being connected directly to my tracky top. Because obviously there's nowhere really for it to clip onto. Or you can then just clip it where you've got something that you can clip it onto. So for me personally, I just think that it's an awesome microphone. On top of that, obviously the receiver's got a 3.5mm jack output on it. So that means you can use it with the likes of camcorders and stuff, basically things that have got 3.5mm microphone inputs on them, or line inputs and stuff. So again, it just makes the microphone super convenient for a start. But it's also it's just like multiple uses out of it. I just think it's absolutely awesome. Now, this isn't a review, but I'll just mention these things. So you obviously can't plug lavaliers into the transmitter. However, for this type of mic, I think the reason why you're using it is because you're not really going to use, a workflow with a lav plugged into a transmitter and a belt pack or something, and then use a receiver on top of all of that. So I think, for the intended use for these particular mics, I think these are quite possibly the best microphones of their types. And also right now, DJI, I think, is selling them for £65. And it looks like Amazon have brought the price down as well to £65 to match them. Now it's £65, and that's for the pair with the charging case and all the bits that come with it. You get 4 little dead cats and all that stuff. It's absolutely a big no-brainer. But what I'm doing is just to see if I can further expand the usability for these particular microphones by doing this test where I switch off the limiting. Now, there's still the chance that I might be slightly clipping stuff because the limiting is switched off at the mics, because I do tend to have a fairly loud voice even when I've got like me softly spoken voice, it's quite loud. But I also have problematic frequencies within my voice. When I say problematic, I mean problematic for like a lot of microphones. So there is a chance I could still have clipped somewhere, you know, between the mic and the receiver. Definitely not the recording level. But like I say, this particular second example now is just to give us a different idea, say for positioning a microphone and the type of like mounting it's used and stuff like that. And I've also had the opportunity to talk a little bit more about the mic itself, the package, the price, all which sound like I'm doing a review. And it's not really a review, it's just basically one of my tests where I just want to know what the results of certain things are like. And hopefully those results might be useful to other people as well. Anyway, I think that probably sums up this test for me now, because like I say, it's the first time I've done it, so hopefully the results have been okay and have been what I expect them to be and stuff. And for anybody interested, I'll have a link in the video description below to a test where I compared this one, or this mic, to the new Boya Mini 2 mic. And in that I do a range test as well for the DJI. I think I've already done that before on another video, but I'll link that video in the description as well, because those new little Boya Mini 2 mics, you know, are great when they're not distorting. So you've got to get the level right, and they're great when the app's working properly. I've had terrible problems with the Boya app on an iPhone and a Samsung phone, so yeah, you know, you've got to take all that into account with these things as well. But those Boyas are great when they're working properly. However, I still prefer the DJI, you know, the Mic Mini. And as much as what the Boyas, you could argue, are more convenient due to the size, the Mic Minis are not massive or anything. And the receiver's not huge either. However, you do get all the extra advantages of being able to, you know, switch off the limiter. You got certain other control that the Boya doesn't have, and then on top of that as well, you can use this mic with camcorders and DSLRs and stuff like that. Basically anything with a 3.5mm mic or line input in them. Anyway, I think that'll do it for this test now. I'll go indoors, have a little listen and do a really quick end summary. Okay, so to an end summary then, and the only thing that I can say here is that I love these little tiny microphones. They are absolutely fantastic. And now that they only cost £65 on Amazon for the 2 mic set with the charging case, to be links for those in the video description below. And also you can pick up the single mic set for £23, which is just absolutely mind-blowing. At those prices, you really can't argue with these microphones, because when I went out the other day, I was using the iPhone with them, and then right now I'm using a video camera to record using 3.5mm mic input or line input on the camera and stuff like that. So super versatile, but at £65, you know what I mean? And if you switch off the limiter, bypass the shelving and stuff like that, you do have a much better sound to play with when you get into post with them. They are an absolute no-brainer. Anyway, like I said, there'll be some more videos coming up to do with the Mic Mini, the single one as well. I'll do some unboxings and show what that's about, and also I will be getting the Action 6 delivered tomorrow, so I'll do some stuff with things like that, you know, I don't know, some comparisons with some GoPros or some shit like that, I don't know yet. But anyway, I'm going to dive off, but don't forget, go and visit Kevin Muldoon's channel, because he's a fantastic YouTuber who gives shit away for free. And also he's just got himself an Action 6 as well, so there'll be a whole bunch of videos coming up from Kevin. Anyway, I'm David Harry. Thank you very much for watching this video. Take care and goodbye now.